I was recently asked if I'd ever had an experience that I couldn't explain. The person who asked me this was clearly looking for something with paranormal overtones, in which case the answer would have been no. But there is one experience that I recall vividly and I still have no explanation for. It's a story about something that happened to me about 35 years ago when I lived in Olympia, Washington. I had a stupid desk job that I hated, and so to lighten the drudgery, I signed up for an art class at Evergreen State College. Now, I'll say up front that I'm not much of an artist. My attempts to draw on the whiteboard in my biology classes were so ridiculous that my students used to find it funny. And in fact, one time when I drew an animal on the whiteboard, they couldn't figure out whether it was a dog or a cow or an armadillo or what, so they nicknamed it the all-purpose quadruped. But even so, I thought that an art class could be fun, so I decided to go for it. One of the other students in the class was a woman that I'll call Laura. Laura was about 35 to 40 at a guess, somewhere in there. And in short order, she kind of attached herself to me. There was nothing sexual at all about it. I didn't get the impression she was flirting. It's just that she seemed to hang on my every word as if I was the most fascinating person she'd ever met in her life. We discovered a mutual interest in languages, and it was off to the races. Now, I hasten to add that back then, I simply wasn't that interesting. I was a young, naive guy who was kind of flailing around trying to figure out what to do with his life, and at that point, my main concerns were trying to get enough money to pay for rent and groceries. So as flattering as it was, even then I realized there was something weird about Laura's attention. But still, it was a sop to my ego, so I did nothing to discourage it. About 3 weeks into the course, I wrote a letter to a friend of mine, remember this is in the days before email and texting, and told him about how I was taking this art class, and in it there was this weird woman named Laura. I really didn't give him any more details than that. I think I ended with something like, at some point I really have to tell you more about her. But I didn't say why she was peculiar or even in what way she was peculiar. Around that time, Laura asked me if my wife and I might want to come to a party that she and her husband were throwing. She said it would just be them and a few friends, and she'd love it if we came. I said okay, still with some feeling of trepidation. But the trepidation was very far from oh hell no, and she seemed so excited, so I agreed to go. So Saturday came and we showed up at Laura's house. Her husband and the friends she'd invited were all the same kind of way too bright-eyed intellectuals that Laura was. I have to admit the conversations were interesting, the topics were all over the place. Science, history, philosophy, art, linguistics, you name it. But everything I said was met with, that is so cool, or wow, how fascinating. To watch from the outside, you'd have thought I was Neil deGrasse Tyson or something. So after about 45 minutes of this, my wife and I both got freaked out enough to where we invented some kind of excuse, I forget what it was, and said we had to go. Laura's forehead creased with dismay, and she said, "Oh, are you sure you can't stay? We're so sorry." So I said, "I'm sorry too," or something like that, and my wife and I left. Laura seemed really disappointed. My wife and I talked all the way home about how bizarre the evening had been and how freaked out we were, even though nothing happened. Two postscripts make this story even creepier. About 3 or 4 days after the party, I got a letter from my friend that I'd written to. I don't have the letter still, unfortunately, but it went something like this. I know you'll probably think this is ridiculous, but I felt like I had to say something. When I read what you said in your letter about your classmate Laura, I got a real premonition of evil. There was immediately a feeling that she meant you harm. I know how skeptical you are about this sort of thing, so you'll probably laugh and then throw this letter in the trash, but I felt like I couldn't simply not tell you. Now, I hasten to point out that my friend was really pretty much a skeptic himself. He'd majored in science and had great rational and logical abilities. I'd never known him to react this way before. The second odd thing is that Laura never came back to class. The first time she missed, I figured she was just sick or something, and actually I was kind of relieved because I didn't want to have to revisit her disappointment about why we'd left the party early. But then the next class came, and the next, and the next, and she never showed up. I never saw her again. My wife said maybe she realized she'd missed her chance to get you, and she wasn't going to get another opportunity, that we were on to her. I actually thought several times of driving past her house, just to see what I could see. And each time I decided not to. The whole idea gave me the creeps. Her house really wasn't on the way to anywhere, and so it would have been an inconvenience to do anyhow. But I just couldn't make myself do it. To this day, I still don't have a good explanation of this. Were they just overenthusiastic, wide-eyed intellectual types and were overcompensating for social awkwardness? Heaven knows I can understand social awkwardness. Or was it a cult? Were they planning on drugging our drinks or something? Or later bringing out a display of Amway products? I honestly have no idea. But even though nothing happened, strange, extremely happy, smart people freak out young couple is about the extent of it. I can't think of that evening without a shudder running up my spine. I many times considered turning it into a short story or novel, but I can't come up with a good ending. So there you are, my one completely inexplicable experience. Probably nothing sinister about it in reality, but still, you might want to be careful about befriending weird middle-aged women in your art classes. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up. Our resources are down there, and please subscribe to our channel. Thank you.